Welcome aboard this unnamed copyright infringement-free spacecraft, fellow human. As you are no doubt aware, we've been in stasis in the hibernatorium until we get close to home. You know the place, the big, mostly blue orb we call Earth? I know, it's hard to remember much fresh out of hibernation like this. Funny though, it feels like we should have been in there longer than that, doesn't it? Oh, and also, why is Frank lying in a pool of his own blood? This is Alien. No, sorry, that would be copyright infringement. This is Nemesis. Brace yourselves, kids. This one's gonna get crunchy. Place the ship board in the center of the table. We're using the basic side, but the board is double-sided when you feel the need for variety and more of a challenge, because this game isn't complicated enough already. Shuffle the room tiles with a number 2 on the back, randomly place 5 of them face down in the matching spaces near the center of the ship, and return the extras to the box without looking at them. Do the same with all the room tiles with a 1 on the back. Shuffle the exploration tokens and place 1 face down on each of the room tiles, returning the extras to the box. Randomly select one of the coordinates cards, place it face down in the space next to the cockpit, and get rid of the rest. Put them in the box. Take the escape pod tokens, shuffle them, and randomly select the appropriate number based on the number of players. Place the lowest numbered escape pod, locked side up, in the A section, the second lowest number in the B section, and alternate between A and B from there until they're all placed. There are 2 Engine 1 tokens, 1 working, 1 damaged. Shuffle them face down, stack them together, and place them both on the Engine 1 slot on the board. Repeat this process for Engines 2 and 3. Place the intruder board near the ship board and put 5 egg tokens on it. Shuffle the intruder weakness cards and place 3 of them face down in the corresponding slots. Put the rest of the cards back in the box. Put the following intruder tokens inside the intruder bag: 1 blank, 4 larva, 1 creeper, 3 adults, and 1 queen. Add 1 more adult for each player. Keep the rest of the tokens handy, you'll need them soon. Separately shuffle the 3 item decks, the event deck, the intruder attack deck, the contamination deck, and the serious wound deck. A lot of different decks in this game. And place them all face down near the board. Put the craft item deck near the other 3 item decks, but you don't need to shuffle that one. Put the scanner near the contamination deck. Put all the other tokens, markers, and dice somewhere close by. Take one of the status markers and put it on the green space of the time track. Look at the numbers indicated on the help cards and return any higher than the number of players to the box. Shuffle the rest and deal 1 at random to each player. Give each player the inventory card holder with the number matching their help card. You can use this to keep your item cards hidden from other players during the game. Remove cards from the corporate and personal objective decks that show a higher number of players than you're playing with. Separately shuffle the rest of those 2 decks and deal 1 card from each to everyone. Make sure nobody else sees your objective cards. Toss the ones you're not using back in the box. Shuffle the character draft cards and take turns in numerical order based on the help cards, drawing 2, choosing a character to play as, and shuffling the other back into the deck. Once everyone has chosen a character, return the unused characters to the box. Each player gets their character's board and mini, action card deck, starting weapon item card, and enough ammo markers to fill that weapon to capacity. Put your character's 2 quest items horizontal side up. During the game, you'll be able to unlock these to flip them over. Put your mini in the hibernatorium. Give player 1 the first player token, and place the blue character corpse token in the hibernatorium as well. With setup complete, you're ready to start playing. Oh, wait, you don't know how yet. Well, before we get into the turn order, there are a few details we need to go over to make that make sense. Noise rolls. You'll be rolling these dice a lot. When you do, here's what the results mean. If you roll a danger icon, move any intruders in neighboring rooms that aren't already in combat with someone else to this one. A room is considered neighboring if it is directly connected to the room you're in by a corridor, and there is no closed door token blocking the path. If there aren't any intruders in neighboring rooms, add a noise marker to every connected corridor that doesn't already have one. If you roll a silence icon, nothing happens, unless you're slimed, which we'll talk about later, in which case treat the silence icon like a danger. On a 1, 2, 3, or 4, add a noise marker to the connected corridor of that number. If there's already a noise marker on that corridor, resolve an encounter instead. For that, discard all noise markers in corridors connected to the room you're in. Then, draw an intruder token from the intruder bag. These tokens are all double-sided, with an icon on one side and a number on the other. Add a mini to the room you're in, matching the icon on the token. There's a key on the intruder board if you forget what all those mean. If the number on the back of the token is greater than the number of action cards in the player's hand, the intruder catches them with a surprise attack, which we'll cover in a bit. If the number is less than or equal to the number of cards in the player's hand, nothing happens just yet. In any case, set the token aside for now. If the token you draw for an encounter is the blank token, you won't be adding an intruder to the room after all. Place noise markers in all the connected corridors and return the blank token to the bag. If that happened to be the last token in the bag, add an adult token too. If you ever enter a room an intruder is already in, you don't need to go through an encounter, you're just automatically in combat, which we'll cover in a bit. If you're ever supposed to add an adult mini, but all 8 are already on the board, yikes, the adults all retreat instead. Remove all adults that aren't actively in combat, and put 1 adult token back into the bag for each, or as many as you have. Then, place an adult mini in the room you were supposed to. The first time an intruder mini is added to the board, all players must choose one of their objective cards to discard. The remaining card is their only objective, and, along with ensuring their own survival, their win condition. Now let's talk about some of the actions you can take throughout the game. Actions have a cost, ranging from 0 to 2, paid by discarding that many action cards from your hand. The actions available to you include a list of basic actions, the action cards in your hand that you use to pay the action cost, some item cards, and some room tiles. The basic actions are as follows. Move your character to a neighboring room. When you move into an empty room, meaning no other characters and no intruders, even if it's already been explored, you'll perform a noise roll. When you enter a room that's unexplored, though, reveal the exploration token first, and flip the room tile face up as well. Set the number of items in the room according to the exploration token by rotating the room tile so that the arrow on one side aligns with the correct number. Next, resolve the special effect on the exploration token. Here's a quick rundown on those. Slime. Add a slime marker to your character board. Fire. Put a fire token in this room. This room is now on fire, and we're in space. That's not good. Malfunction. Put a malfunction token in this room. This indicates something is wrong with it. Any room actions or computers here are unavailable. You'll need to fix the malfunction to get access to them again. Door. Add a door token to the corridor you came in through. This indicates a closed door, and characters and intruders cannot move through them. If an intruder attempts to, they don't leave the room they're in, but they do destroy the door. Knock the token over. When a door is opened, simply remove the token. If there are no door tokens left when you're supposed to add one, steal one from somewhere else on the board. Danger. Skip the noise roll you'd normally be about to perform and just pretend like you rolled a danger. Silence. Skip the noise roll and pretend you rolled silence. After the exploration token has been resolved, put it back in the box and then do the noise roll. Similar to a regular move, another action is careful movement, which costs 1 more action card, but you choose which corridor gets a noise marker instead of doing a noise roll for it. If you have a weapon in one of your character board's hand slots, you can shoot an intruder in the room you're in. When you shoot, in addition to paying the action cost, you'll have to discard 1 ammo token on the weapon, decide which intruder you're targeting, then roll the combat die. On a blank, you miss. On this symbol, you deal 1 injury to your target if it's a larva or creeper, or miss if it's something else. On this symbol, 1 injury to a larva, creeper, or adult. This symbol deals 1 injury to any target, and this one deals 2. You can also attempt a melee attack if you're feeling frisky. Draw 1 Contamination card and add it to your discard pile. We'll go over those later, but they're not good. Choose a target, then roll the combat die. The results are the same as shooting, but if you miss, your character's dealt a serious wound, which we'll cover in a bit. Oh, and this symbol only deals 1 injury on a melee attack. If there are any heavy objects in the room, you can pick one up by placing the object token in one of the 2 hand slots on your character board. Heavy objects include character corpses, intruder carcasses, and intruder eggs. We'll talk about why you might want to pick those up later. If neither hand slot is empty, you'll have to drop what's in one of them first to pick up something else. You can freely drop any item or object from either hand slot or your inventory without using an action. Objects remain in the room they're dropped, items are discarded. Some items will have this icon to indicate they are heavy, in which case they have to go in one of those 2 hand slots. Otherwise, it's a normal item and you can keep it secret in your inventory until you want to use it or trade it. Speaking of which, if there are any other characters present in the same room as you can initiate a trade with all of them. You can only trade items and objects. If 2 players involved in a trade agree, they can exchange as many of them as they want. Players can also choose to give items or objects to others during a trade without getting anything in return. This only counts as an action for the player who starts the trade, and only they pay the action cost. The last possible basic action is to craft an item. Players can freely look through the cards in the crafted items deck at any time. To claim one of these items, though, you have to craft them. Take a look at the gray component icons at the bottom of the card. When taking the craft item action, in addition to paying the action cost, discard 1 item card with a matching blue component icon in the top left corner for each of those gray ones, then take the crafted item into your inventory instead. In addition to basic actions, you can also take the actions described on any of your character's 10 unique action cards. To do this, discard the card and pay the action cost. The search action card allows you to look for useful items in the room you're in. Look at the color of the room to determine which item deck you search. In a white room, you'll be able to choose any of the 3. Draw 2 cards from that item deck, choose one to keep, and discard the other. If you acquire a weapon by searching, it comes into play with 1 ammo token. If you add an item card to another item card, like with the extended magazine, place it next to the item you're adding it to. From now on, both cards are treated as 1 in beautiful, perfect harmony. When you're finished searching, reduce the item counter of the room by 1 by rotating the tile clockwise. When the arrow indicates no items remain in this room, the search action is no longer available here. Some items, and most rooms, also have actions you can take. To describe them all would take way too long, but we'll go over some of the big ones. Items should mostly be self-explanatory. For any rooms we don't cover, you'll want to dive into the rulebook. In the cockpit, you can take a flight controls action to either check coordinates or set destination. You can't do both on the same action. To check coordinates, secretly look at the coordinates card and put it back. You can tell other people what you saw if you want, or don't, or lie about it. Depending on your objectives, you may not want the ship to end up on Earth like the rest of the crew probably does. To set the destination, there can't be any intruders in the room, and no characters can be in hibernation. Move the destination marker to any space you choose on the destination track. This indicates where the ship is headed based on the coordinates card, which will be important at the end of the game. In the hibernatorium, once the token on the time track has made it to any blue space, you can try to hibernate, as long as there are no intruders in the room with you. When you do, make a noise roll, and as long as no intruders show up, you succeed. Remove your mini from the board. You're done playing until the rest of the players die, hibernate, or take an escape pod. And if you and the ship manage to survive, and the destination set in the cockpit happens to be right, you're well on your way to victory. In the 3 engine rooms, you can check the engine there by secretly looking at the top engine token. If it's a working token, the engine's in good shape. If it's damaged, it's not. At the end of the game, if 2 or more engines are damaged, the ship explodes and every living thing on it dies. If you want to repair or break an engine, you'll need to use a repairs action card or a tools item card to take a separate action. Then, take both engine tokens, secretly check their contents, and put them back in the order of your choice. Remember, the top one is the one that matters. In the generator, you can initiate or stop the self-destruct sequence. When a self-destruct sequence is started, place a status marker on the first space of the self-destruct track. It will advance over time. If someone stops the sequence, remove the status marker from the track. It'll have to start over from the beginning if someone wants to try again. Once that marker reaches any yellow space on the self-destruct track, though, it can't be stopped. When it reaches the skull, the ship explodes. You can't start a self-destruct sequence if any characters are already in hibernation. Some actions can only be performed either in or out of combat, as indicated by one of these two symbols. If you don't see that symbol, whether you're in combat or not doesn't matter. You are in combat if you are in the same room as one or more intruder. To get out of combat, a character will need to either kill all intruders in the room or escape. We've already covered the ways that a character can attack an intruder, and we'll go over escaping in a second. But first, let's explain what happens when an intruder attacks a character. First, the intruder will choose a target. That's easy if there's only one character present. If there's more than one character in the room with them, they'll go after whoever has less action cards in their hand. If that's a tie, the player closest to the first player token in turn order is the target. Next, draw and resolve one intruder attack card. If the card has an intruder symbol that matches the attacking intruder, resolve the card text. If not, the attack misses. If the attack is performed by a larva, instead of drawing an intruder attack card, move the larva mini to the player's character board and add one contamination card to the player's discard pile. These cards are a disadvantage because when they get shuffled into your deck and drawn, they provide no value. You can't even spend them toward action costs. They could also kill you at the end of the game, but we'll cover that later. There are several actions that can help get rid of contamination cards. Most, in fact, maybe all of them, involve using the scanner to read the hidden text, then discarding some contamination cards and keeping others. When you scan a card, you'll either see the word infected or something else. Depending on the action you're taking, revealing a card with the infected text could mean you're infected. If you are, place a larva mini on your character board, and don't discard the infected card. If you already have a larva mini on your character board when you're supposed to add one because of an infection, you die immediately. Note, adding a second larva to your character board only kills you if it happened because of an infection. Otherwise, you just don't add the larva. Speaking of death, one way out of combat is to kill all the intruders fighting you. Anytime you inflict an injury to an intruder, you'll add an injury marker to its base. If it's a larva or egg, one injury is enough to kill it. Remove that mini from the board. If it's an adult or creeper, draw one intruder attack card and ignore everything but the number in the top left corner. If that number is less than or equal to the number of injury tokens on the mini, it's dead. Remove the mini from the game board and replace it with an intruder carcass token. If not, it's still alive. If it's a breeder or a queen, draw two intruder cards and add the two numbers together. Then resolve just like an adult or creeper. If there's a retreat arrow in the top left corner on any of those cards, you've scared them off. Draw an event card and move the intruder through the corridor of the number matching what's in the movement section of the card. Then discard it. Throughout the game, there are a multitude of things that can cause a wound, though most of them involve the previously described combat with giant alien monsters. There are two types of wounds, light and serious. When a character suffers a light wound, place a wound marker on the top space of their light wound track. If there's already one on the track, advance it down one space instead. If the wound marker reaches the serious wound space, you get to discard the wound marker, but only because you're suffering a serious wound. Whenever you're dealt a serious wound, draw one serious wound card and place it next to your character board. The effect text on that card applies to you as long as the card remains there face up. Some actions, whether through items or rooms, will allow you to dress serious wounds by flipping the card face down. But you'll also want to heal them as soon as you can, because that allows you to discard the card entirely. And that's important because as soon as you have 3 serious wound cards, whether dressed or not, you're dead. When a character dies, they drop all heavy objects they're carrying in the room they're in, and their mini is replaced with a character corpse token. To escape combat, you'll need to perform a movement to a neighboring room, but resolve an intruder attack before moving your mini. As long as you survive whatever wounds are inflicted, you still finish the movement. But depending on your noise roll, you may not be out of the woods just yet. If you die in an escape attempt, your character corpse stays in the room you were trying to leave. And note that even though you may have an objective that involves the death of one or more other characters, there's no way for you to directly attack someone who isn't an intruder. You can do a lot to hurt them indirectly, though, such as locking them in a room that's on fire, starting the ship's self-destruct sequence, or throwing a grenade into a room with an intruder and another character. Now, I think it's safe to start talking about the general shape of the game. I feel like the rulebook's terminology here is a little backwards and confusing, so I'm going to call these rounds. A round consists of 2 phases. During the player phase, all players draw action cards up to a hand of 5. If your action deck is ever depleted, shuffle the discard pile to reform. Next, except during the first round, pass the first player token clockwise. Whenever players have to do something in order, start with whoever has the token and go clockwise from there. Then, starting with the first player token, everyone gets a turn of 2 actions. Once everyone has taken a turn, go around the table again, with each player choosing between actions or passing. If you can't or don't want to take both actions, even if you've already taken one this turn, you have to pass. Once you've passed, you can't take any more actions for the rest of the round, but you can discard as many cards left in your hand as you want. Then, flip your help card over to indicate you're done for this round. Note, if you end a turn in a room with a fire token, you'll take 1 light wound. Every turn. So maybe don't pass if the room you're in is on fire. Once everyone has passed, move on to the event phase. Move the time track 1 space to the right. If the self-destruct sequence is active, advance that tracker 1 space as well. Every intruder in combat with a character attacks. Every intruder in the same room as a fire marker suffers 1 injury. If the nest happens to be on fire, remove 1 egg from the intruder board. Draw 1 event card and do the following to resolve it. Move intruders who match the symbols on the card to a neighboring room through the corridor indicated on the card. Then, resolve the event effect described in the card text. Discard the card when you're finished, unless it says otherwise. If you ever run out of event cards, which you probably won't, shuffle the discard pile. Next, draw an intruder token from the intruder bag. If you draw a larva token, remove it from the bag and replace it with an adult. If you draw a creeper, replace it with a breeder. If you draw a blank, add an adult token, but put the blank back too. If you draw an adult or breeder, everyone who's not already in combat with an intruder makes a noise roll, in turn order. Put the token back in the bag. If you draw the queen and a character is in the nest, place the queen mini there and resolve an encounter. If there's not a character in the nest, or if you don't know where it is yet, just add an egg token to the intruder board. Put the queen token back in the bag. After resolving all the effects of the event phase, start a new round with another player phase. Okay, just a few more details to cover from here. Technical corridors are little crawl spaces that are way too creepy to go crawling through when there are aliens aboard. Technical corridor entrances, found in some rooms, and the special technical corridors space are off-limits to player characters. If a number points to a technical corridor entrance when placing a noise marker, put it in the technical corridor's space instead. And remember, if you have to place a noise marker on a corridor that already has one, you don't. You resolve an encounter. If an intruder moves through a technical corridor entrance, it disappears into the ducts. Discard its injury markers, remove the mini from the board, and put its intruder token back into the intruder bag. Escape pods. You can unlock these manually through certain actions, but they'll all unlock automatically as soon as the first character dies, or if the self-destruct sequence track reaches a yellow space. If an escape pod is unlocked and has at least 1 empty space, any character may enter it from the corresponding evacuation section. But first, You have to make a noise roll. If that brings an intruder to the room, you fail to enter the pod. If you succeed, move your mini onto one of the empty spaces on the pod and decide if you want to launch immediately or wait. If you launch, remove the pod and your mini from the game. You've made it to Earth, but whether you survived and accomplished your objectives will have to be determined once the people you just abandoned finish the rest of the game. If you wait, you pass for the rest of this turn, and you can only opt to launch on the first turn of subsequent rounds. If you continue to wait, you continue to pass, but you can choose to exit the pod and go back to the evacuation section without taking any actions at the start of any turn. If an intruder enters the evacuation section, you'll be forced to leave the pod to deal with them. And if anyone else joins you while you're waiting in a pod, they can launch the pod for both of you on their launch immediately opportunity. Remember those intruder weakness cards you placed face down on the intruder board during setup? Those might come in handy once you reveal them. To do that, you'll need to bring either an intruder egg, intruder carcass, or character corpse to the laboratory and analyze it. Once you do, reveal the corresponding intruder weakness card, which will modify the basic rules of the intruders and give you a slight edge that could save your life. You also got a couple quest items at the start of the game. These are completely useless until you finish whatever task the card describes in order to activate it. Once you do, flip the card over to the side where things are arranged vertically, and it becomes just like any other item. You can even trade it away if you feel so inclined. And we already covered some of the rooms, but there's one more we should mention. Once you find the nest, you can take an egg from the intruder board. This is a heavy object, it's a very big egg, so it needs to go in one of your hand slots. Once you do that, make a noise roll. As soon as there are no more eggs left on the intruder board, the nest is destroyed. Put an injury marker on it to show this. If you're ever in a room with an egg nobody's currently carrying, you can try to destroy it with a shoot or melee attack action. One injury is all it takes, and you won't draw any contamination cards or suffer any wounds in the attempt. But you will have to perform a noise roll. Winning. Nemesis is a semi-cooperative game. More than one player can win, maybe even all of them. Probably not. But other players winning doesn't necessarily mean anything for your victory. To win, you must meet two conditions. Fulfill your objective, as indicated on the objective card you elected to keep during your first encounter, and survive, either by hibernating in the hibernatorium with the ship still functioning and headed to Earth, or ejecting in one of the escape pods. The game can end in a variety of ways. If the time marker reaches the red space on the time track, the ship jumps into hyperspace. Any characters still on board that haven't entered hibernation are killed in the process. If the self-destruct marker reaches the red skull space on the self-destruct sequence track, or if you have to place a 9th fire or malfunction token on the board, the ship explodes, and everyone and everything, human or intruder, awake or in hibernation, dies. If the last living character dies, hibernates, or ejects in an escape pod, the game is over, because nobody's left to keep playing it. If at least one character survives after the game has ended, check your victory conditions. If the ship hasn't exploded yet, check the engines by revealing the top token in each engine stack. If at least 2 of them are working, the ship is still just fine. If at least 2 of them are damaged, the ship explodes and everything on it dies. If after that the ship still hasn't exploded, check the coordinates by revealing the coordinates card. If the current destination doesn't match up with Earth, all characters in hibernation die. The only exception is if your character has the quarantine objective, which requires Mars as the ship's destination instead. If you haven't died yet, there's still time, because you have to check for contamination. Scan all your contamination cards. If at least one of them is infected, shuffle all your contamination cards and action cards together, then draw the top 4. If any of those 4 is a contamination card, the character dies of an alien parasite. If, after all those checks, any character is still alive, check their objective to see if they met its requirements. If they did, they win. Any player whose character did not both survive and accomplish their objective loses. And that, more or less, is how you play Nemesis. Any questions? Hey, my name's Kyle McCarley. I'm a voice actor by trade, but board games are one of my favorite hobbies. If you like board games, you should check out The Board and Barrel every Friday night at 7:30 Pacific on twitch.tv/Kyle McCarley, where me and my buddies play board games. We also give you guys a chance to help us or hurt us, depending on how you feel, with our Buff and Nerf house rules. And we have virtual bingo cards you can fill out while you're watching the show. It's a good time. Hope to see you there.